Abraham's father, Terah, was an oracle priest in Nippur and and thus knowing in astronomy. In those days each of the great Anunnaki was assigned a celestial counterpart, and since the solar system had 12 members, the Olympic circle, throughout the millennia and up to and including Greek time, was always made up of 12. It was thus that the worship of the gods was closely associated with the motions of the celestial bodies, and the biblical admonitions against the worship of the sun, the moon, and the host of heaven were in reality admonitions against the worship of gods other than Yahweh. The rituals, festivals, days of abstinence, and other rites that expressed the worship of the gods were thus attuned to the motions of the gods' celestial counterparts. Worship required a calendar, temples were observatories, priests were astronomers, the ziggurats were temples of time, where timekeeping joined astronomy to formalize worship. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son, and called him Sheth. For God, she said, has granted me another offspring instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. And to Sheth, in turn, a son was born, and he called him Enosh. It was then that calling Yahweh by name began. Thus, according to the Bible, Genesis chapter 4, verses 25 through 26, did the children of Adam begin to worship their God. How this calling in the name of the Lord was done, what form the worship took, what rituals were involved, we are not told. It happened, the Bible makes clear, in remote times, well before the deluge. Sumerian texts, however, throw light on the subject. They not only assert, repeatedly and emphatically, that there were cities of the gods in Mesopotamia before the deluge, and that when the deluge had occurred, there had already been demigods, offsprings of daughters of man, by male Anunnaki gods, but also that the worship took place in consecrated places. We call them temples. They were already, we learn from the earliest texts, temples of time. One of the Mesopotamian versions of the events leading to the deluge is the text known, by its opening words, "When the gods like men," in which the hero of the deluge is called Atrahasis, he who is exceedingly wise. The tale relates how Anu, the ruler of Nibiru, returned to that planet for a visit to Earth after arranging a division of powers and territories on Earth between his feuding sons, the half-brothers Enlil, Lord of the Command, and Enki, Lord of Earth, putting Enki in charge of the gold-mining operations in Africa. After describing the hard work of the Anunnaki assigned to the mines, their mutiny, and the ensuing creation through genetic engineering by Enki and his half-sister Ninharsag of the Adamu, a primitive worker, the epic relates how mankind began to procreate and multiply. In time, mankind began to upset Enlil by its excessive conjugations, especially with the Anunnaki, a situation reflected in the biblical version of the deluge tale, and Enlil prevailed on the great Anunnaki, in their council, to use the foreseen catastrophe of the avalanche of water to wipe mankind off the face of the earth. But Enki, though he joined in swearing to keep the decision a secret from mankind, was not happy with the decision and sought ways to frustrate it. He chose to achieve that through the intermediary of Atrahasis, a son of Enki by a human mother. The text, which at times assumes a biographical style by Atrahasis himself, quotes him saying, "I am Atrahasis. I lived in the temple of Enki, my lord," a statement which clearly establishes the existence of a temple in those remote pre-Diluvian times. Describing the worsening climatic conditions on the one hand, and Enlil's harsh measures against mankind on the other hand, in the period preceding the deluge, the text quotes Enki's advice to the people through Atrahasis how to protest against Enlil's decrees. The worship of the gods should stop. Enki opened his mouth and addressed his servant, saying thus to him, the elders, on a sign summoned to the house of council, "Let heralds proclaim a command loudly throughout the land. Do not